Okay, let's start the next half of the session with Chris Evans, Managing Director of Winsome Resources.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here at another wonderful Paydirt conference, thanks to Bill and the team. And also a pleasure to present the story of Winsome Resources today. Now, Winsome's a company that I've come to think of with three attributes. And these are attributes that have led us to good early success since our IPO in November last year, and will continue to lead us to further success in the future. And I'm going to spend a moment to talk about these three attributes because I think they're quite important. And having just returned from 5 weeks in Canada, these 3 points came up quite often in my discussions with battery materials colleagues who are listed on the TSX. So the first attribute is that we're lithium focused. The second is that we're Quebec focused. And the third is that we're listed on the ASX. So the lithium speaks for itself. Being Quebec focused, I'll talk about a bit more during this this presentation, but it has there's a great deal of advantage to being Quebec focused. And the crucial third attribute is that we're listed on the ASX. And being listed on the ASX gives us access to the wonderful support and capital that we've seen so far through the IPO, which was hugely oversubscribed to the tune of 5 times. And also gives us and investors the opportunity to ride the upside that the ASX inevitably brings for early stage battery and lithium focused projects like ours. So Winsome listed on the ASX on the 30th of November last year. As I said a second ago, we were hugely oversubscribed. We were offered well over $80 million during the IPO, which was unfortunate for some investors as they got cut back or missed out, but it created great aftermarket support. We raised the full $18 million and we sit with about $16.5 million in the bank today. So well funded to proceed with the development of our 4 projects. Got about 140 million shares on issue, and since listing at 20 cents, our share price today is sitting at about 51, 52 cents, which puts our market cap at $75 million. We are very much Quebec focused, as I mentioned. We listed with 3 projects and we've gained 1 since listing, and I'll talk about those all during this presentation. Now, lithium demand and the world market has been discussed quite a bit during today, and no doubt will be in other presentations, so I won't dwell on it too much, except to say that when recently in Canada, I really saw the support that the Canadian government gives for the development of a lithium project like ours. They have set specific targets. The federal government sets specific targets for 100% EV uptake by 2035, and the Quebec government has gone a step further than that and said 50% by 2030. Range anxiety tends to be a problem, a concern for Canadian consumers in terms of electric vehicles. So of course, high quality hard rock spodumene product is the ideal feedstock for a high nickel, high energy battery. This slide's interesting because the World Economic Forum put this out a little while ago, and it talked about some of the characteristics of the battery supply chains around the world. And a couple of interesting points out of that is that 99% of the world's lithium reserves still are in Chile, Argentina, Australia and China. So that presents some economic risk to the rest of the world where those reserves aren't present. And it also notes that the production of battery materials is inherently, and particularly lithium materials, is inherently high in terms of its carbon footprint historically. And this relates to us importantly because being in Quebec, where 99.8% of all power is generated by hydroelectricity, this gives us a huge advantage in terms of ESG capabilities. Also, I like this. I found it on the Canadian government website. Lithium and tantalum are both on the Canadian critical minerals list. So before I get into our 4 projects, to summarise our investment highlights, our flagship project, Cancet, has had 5,000 metres of drilling done on historically from the previous owners of these assets, Metaltech. There's extremely high grades, outcrops on the surface, and we've got 3.7% lithium oxide for over a 17-metre drill hole in one instance. It's very coarse-grained spodumene, and we've had metallurgical test work done which shows it's very amenable to dense media separation. We produced a 6% concentrate, no problems with our first pass HLS test work program. Our ESG is very important, and the way we manifest our ESG capabilities is to talk about the hydropower, which runs right through our claims in Quebec, where we're drilling at the moment at Cancet. There's a hydropower line and, in fact, a station within about 5 kilometres. We've got good relations with the local Indigenous people, the Cree people. They're very used to mining. Quebec is the only province in Canada that has a formal agreement in place with the First Nations people. The Treaty of the Braves was signed a few years ago, and it formalises the process with which you deal with the traditional owners of the land. Our IPO was also cornerstoned by Lithium Royalty Corporation and by the Jushi Group. Now, Lithium Royalty Corporation have become big advocates of ours in North America. They have a royalty over numerous other lithium producers in the world, Core Lithium most recently, the Mount Cattlin mine for Galaxy or Allchem now, and numerous others around different jurisdictions in the world. So they're very much promoters of ours, and they took 9% of our company during the IPO. And the Jushi Group's an interesting one. They produce fiberglass all over the world. They're Hong Kong based, and they have a fiberglass manufacture facility in North Carolina. Fiberglass, like watch glass, requires high quality spodumene as a feedstock. So they took about 5% of us, and we haven't given away any offtake yet, but they would be a logical North American focused offtake partner in the future. So the 4 projects, well, the 3 we went to IPO with Cancet, Adina and Cermak Clapier. Each one of those is pretty much a year behind the other in terms of exploration development. Cancet's our flagship project. It's had 5,000 metres of drilling done in the past, and we're currently doing another 2,000 metre program as we speak. Should be finished next week. Extremely high grades. It sits right on the Trans-Tiger Highway, which you can see there in orange, goes through it. And there's Quebec hydropower lines going right through our claims. Adina has also had some drilling, 1,700 metres of diamond drilling. Again, good grades, well above 2%, but a limited amount of drilling. All the previous drilling tended to have been done by consultants, run from Australia on the ground by consultants in Canada with no real end game in mind. In both cases, the drill rig was landed on the outcrop. Quite a good deal of drilling was done, but with no end in mind, as I said, and that end should be the formation of a resource. And we think we're pretty close to forming a resource at Cancet at least. Cermak Clapier, our 3rd project, is again a year behind Adina in that there's a known resource established by Namaska about 5 years ago sitting immediately adjacent to it. There's outcropping granites visible at Cermak, but we haven't got on the ground yet to test it. And then most recently, post-IPO, we picked up the Decel project. Now that's halfway between Rouen and Val d'Or, 2 major mining towns in Quebec. Just to the north, there's a TSX-listed company called Vision Lithium that's currently drilling mineralised pegmatites, and just to the south, Sayona Mining also holds some mineralised pegmatite ground. We've got 600 claims there. It's about 40,000 hectares, and on Google Earth, and I'll show this in a minute, you can really see the outcropping granites. It's perfect lithium pegmatite territory. So we're really excited about getting on the ground there as soon as the snow melts shortly. So to go into a bit of detail of Cancet, our flagship project, we've got about 370 odd claims at Cancet, and you can see them on the right-hand side in the background there. In the past, there was a magnetic survey done, and that's the colourful sort of inset you can see over the main area where the outcropping pegmatite exists, and then was subsequently drilled. So in the expansion of the inset, you can see the magnetic signature in pink and then the drill holes that are over it. And what that shows is that there's a definite magnetic anomaly that shows up with pegmatite. We've since expanded that magnetic survey to cover the entire 370 odd claims. And out of that, we're now developing further targets. On the bottom, the picture on the left-hand side is a picture I took in October last year and shows spodumene crystal at Cancet. I've been to a number of hard rock mines around the world, and these are the largest crystals I've ever seen. And unsurprisingly, this is the exact spot that corresponds to that very high grade of 3.7% lithium oxide that I referred to previously. The drilling we've currently done has been modelled, and in the bottom left, you can see the block model of the ore body. Now the green, there's a little bit of detail there, but the green represents greater than 1% lithium oxide. So there's a known ore body. We haven't put a reserve around it yet, but the current drilling we're doing is here. It consists of 20 diamond drill holes. Roughly 10 of those are infill drilling. In that central area, you can see where the previous drilling was done. And then 10 of the holes are testing extensions, or anomalies were found through the magnetics to the east and west, which you can see circled in red. To the top right, you can see a leapfrog model of our existing ore body and all the drill holes that have gone into that so far. The picture on the bottom right is I took myself about a week ago, went on site, and it's fascinating to see how they actually drill in the cold. When that was taken, it was probably minus 25 degrees, and they sit inside the drill rig and very gingerly stick their arms out to load the rods out the top of the arm, and then quickly scurry back inside into the heating in order to stay warm. I spent 5 weeks on site, and as a slight digression, it was amazing seeing how experienced Canadian miners continue to operate despite the extreme conditions. And they would probably say the same thing if they came to operate in the Pilbara here. When I arrived, we had some contractors lined up to do the clearing, so to cut down trees and clear the path for the drill rig to get in and set up the drill pads. Those contractors couldn't make it, so myself and the country manager ended up spending 10 days with chainsaws chopping down the trees ourselves. It wasn't quite what I was expecting out of this trip, but every day the country manager and I would sit down to lunch after having chopped dozens of trees down and sort of look at each other and think, this is one of the beauties of working for a small company. We not only get to develop the project right from the beginning, but we've got this hands-on, which we both happen to love. So it's a fascinating experience, and it gave me a great appreciation of what it takes to set up a drill program in the cold and how the drillers operate. I should also say that with our drilling, we've discovered visible spodumene in the first couple of holes that have been logged. The first 3 holes have now been shipped down to Val d'Or where they're being tested, and they should be getting to the lab today or tomorrow. That means the first assay should be out within 3 to 4 weeks, although labs in Quebec, as they are here, are notoriously busy at the moment and therefore somewhat unreliable. At Decel, I briefly covered previously, there's about 40,000 hectares there. There's 670 odd claims. You can see the granite outcrops in the Google Earth image to the bottom left, and that's about 600 or 700 metres long. So we've got teams ready to hit the ground there as soon as the snow melts in a couple of weeks. To summarise the work we've got on, the winter drilling that I just referred to should be finished next week. Results coming through in about 4 weeks. We've got a gravity survey underway at the moment on site. We're going to overlay that with the magnetic survey and the LiDAR survey that we already have at Cancet. And with the three of those on top of each other, it makes for great target identification. And in fact, it already has generated some targets. And so we've got 2 teams of geologists that will hit the ground, again, in about a month when the snow melts, take rock chip samples and then work out drill targets for later in the summer, into the autumn and the winter. And it really means that Cancet will have teams on the ground and will be drilling continuously for the next couple of years with the objective of establishing a resource as soon as possible. We've got met test work going on from both Cancet and Adina through SGS as we speak, and the results should be out in a few weeks. And we've got the teams sorted out for the summer field work as I described. I think the last point to note about Winsome Resources is that we've got an experienced team, and not just a team that perhaps you might see in other smaller companies that's dominated by, and certainly no slur on these professions, by geologists and financiers or financiers. I think we've got a combination. We have geologists in terms of Dr. Qingtao Zhen and our country manager, Carl Kamartin. We also have myself. I've got about 7 years of lithium experience and a project development background. And Justin Boylson and Peter Yude have both worked for operational companies and built projects. So the point I'm trying to make is that we're very much focused on developing a resource and getting at least one of our projects into production as quickly as possible. This summarises the exploration drilling we're doing at the moment, leading into a resource publication by this time next year, and that'll be coincident with a scoping study. I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone. We've got a booth at the back. I look forward to speaking to you if you have any questions.